Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to AIA Health and Wellness Live 2020, powered by AIA Vitality. My name is Nairn and I am your host for today's session. Thank you for tuning in after that energetic dance workout session with Virgin Active. I hope everyone managed to catch their breath and some water before we begin our next program. Our next topic is a special with World Mental Health Day on the subject, Mental Health Matters, Important Steps on our wellness journey. We have with us Ms. Patrice Pajot Lee, Resource Counsellor from Hope Worldwide Singapore. Patrice graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of California at Berkeley. She completed her master's in counseling from Monash University, and she is a member of the American Counseling Association and Singapore Association for Counseling. Although an American, Patrice has been residing in Singapore for over 3 decades. She and her husband have conducted numerous parenting, marriage, and mental wellness workshops and trainings throughout Asia and the Southeast Asian region, as well as the United States. Patrice has 3 wonderful adult children. Now, before I hand my time over to Patrice to start off the session, we have launched a poll question. Do you think mental health is important? The poll question can be found within the chat box located just below this live stream window. So please do take a couple of moments to take part in this poll. We'll also have a couple of minutes at the end for Patrice to answer any of the questions you may have for her. You may find the Q&A section located in the chat box below this live stream window. And with that, Patrice, I will now hand my time over to you.
Thank you, and I
You're welcome.
for that. I appreciate being here today. Thank you all for joining us. A very important session today. Mental health matters. So you might be curious, what are we talking about today? It's a very broad topic, and we have a short amount of time. I will try to give you just the information that is most important. Hopefully today you'll be able to understand more about why your mental health is one of the most important things in your life. So as we begin, I like to read this quote for you. Mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you're going. And as you can see from this picture, it's got a lot of twists and turns. And if you're just thinking about, I got to get down to the bottom of that hill, you might miss one of those turns. And who knows what's going to happen then. That's the same thing with what we've been going through with all of this COVID-19 situation. I know you're probably tired of hearing that, but it's been a tough year. And it's a lot longer than any of us expected. And maybe it's going to continue. And so it's really important that we make sure we're taking care of the journey that we're on, the process that we're going through, even if we've never had a mental illness condition. But the stress that we've been under and the kind of environment we've been in definitely has affected all of us. Our mental wellness is very important to our overall well-being, as much as our physical health. We need to do a check-in with ourselves. Now, good mental health is not about always having a sunny day or being perfectly happy, never having a problem. Remember the twists and turns. There's always going to be a sharp bend that we have to watch out for. Mental wellness is not always having positive thoughts. There will be times when things are tough. There will be times when we don't believe in ourselves or when we struggle to wake up. That doesn't mean we can't have good mental health. Mental health is not about being perfect. I know we would all like to get everything in order and always have our day go well, but that's not reality, is it? That's not life. It's impossible. Because as humans, we're very complex. And there's so many different areas of our life that get affected. So we've got to take care of our mental health. It determines the quality of our life. Good mental health is about how we think, how we feel, and also what we do. So it incorporates the complete self. It's about focus, connection, and the quality of life that we have. But let me ask you, why is it so hard to talk about mental health? It's not easy, is it? It's not easy to tell somebody, you know, I'm feeling depressed, or I'm scared. I don't want to go to that location. I don't want to do something new. Or I'm thinking of ending my life. It's very hard to talk about that. There is so much stigma that's going on and so much shame that's involved in talking about our inner workings. Sometimes we're afraid people will laugh at us. You know, like maybe they'll say, well, just suck it up. Just do it. Why are you so anxious? And then if they respond that way, we will feel even more ashamed. So better keep quiet. But what that does is we end up suffering alone and not getting the help that we need. Sometimes we tell ourselves, I don't want to burden my family. If I tell them, the kind of sadness I'm feeling, the low energy I'm having, they're just going to feel burdened. They already have enough worries. And so we hold it in. But that doesn't help our mental health. That hurts our mental health. Sometimes we think it's going to go away. I'll just get a good sleep, or I'll get a new job, or I'll take a break from my job, and I'll feel better tomorrow. But tomorrow comes and we're still feeling those challenges in our thoughts and emotions. It's important that we do a mental check-in, just as much as if we were having aches and pains in our body. If you sprain your ankle, what do? You go to the doctor or the physio, and then they will tell you, get some rest and do this program. Nobody's ashamed of that. It's the same thing with our mental health. Sometimes we need to do a check-in. We just need to get a little bit of help. We need to get some direction and then follow a plan, just like we do when we're healing. In fact, this is what one of my clients told me. I asked him if I could share this. He's an executive at a global firm, and I asked him why did he decide to come for counseling. He said at first he was very afraid of his boss's reaction. If his boss or his colleagues found out that he has some depression, they might not want to promote him. It might interfere with his career path. So he held back. He had a lot of worries that this is not going to help me. I better keep it quiet. But two things really helped him, and I wanted to share that with you today. The first thing was his wife. She said, you're hurting. And when you hurt, I also hurt. And your family hurts. We want you to get well. So go ahead, get help. And the second thing that really helped him was his boss's reaction. It was so positive. The boss said, of course, just like if you've broken your leg, I would expect you to need some time for healing. Same thing. If you're struggling with depression, you need some time, go get help. I appreciate him. He has the extra stigma of being an executive and thinking, what will my employees think of me? What will the rest of the committee think of me? But he did what was necessary for his own mental health. Mental health is as important as our physical health. Let me share with you some of the common mental health issues in Singapore. This might come as a surprise to you, but 1 in 7 Singaporeans has experienced a mental health issue in their lifetime. That's not uncommon, is it? That's a lot more than we probably were expecting to hear. But that just tells us that this happens to a lot of us. Now, the most common ones in Singapore: major depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety issues or OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, alcohol use disorder, eating disorders, and borderline personality. Now that's a lot of things. I just want to focus on the top 3 that affect Singaporeans the most. Let me give you a little idea of some of these definitions. Major depression. This is when you have a depressed mood, you're not interested in activities that normally you enjoy doing, like spending time with your family or doing your projects at work. You have disturbed sleep, not enough sleep, too much sleep. And with depression, there's usually a deep sadness. It just kind of weighs on you. And no matter what you do, you can't quite shake that. A feeling of hopelessness, lack of concentration, and maybe even suicidal thoughts. This is what major depression looks like. Anxiety disorders. Okay, that has a lot of range. I myself also go through that. That's why I've brought my box today, which you'll see later. Anxiety issues. Now, we all get afraid and nervous, but anxiety issues mean this limits you. There's an excessive worry that you can't control. The mind won't stop worrying. You're restless, you're tired, and as with depression, you can't sleep well. The last one I just want to describe a little bit is OCD. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. This is characterized by compulsive rituals that we have to do. Now, some of us know about this. Maybe you've heard of people who wash their hands, not because of COVID, which we all wash our hands now, thank you, but because they are afraid that the germs are there. And they wash their hands, and then they come back again and wash again. And then they come back again and wash, maybe 10, 12, 20 times. That's OCD. OCD is also repetitive counting. You count your steps on the way to the station. You count your steps on the way to the office. Or repeating locking the doors and windows even though you've already done that. So obsessive compulsive disorder, many people in Singapore struggle with that, having to repeat the same thing over and over. Now the problem with these is not that it's a one-time occurrence. These are things that interfere with your quality of life. That's why we talk about doing a mental health check-in. Let me show you some of the symptoms. Now, the list is quite long. I've just given, again, the ones that I find are the most common. Mood swings. Mood swings. Not just a down day, but high, 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 low, low, low. Mood swings. Being anxious or irritable most of the time. Okay? Having a low mood for a long period of time. I hope you're catching what I'm saying. It has to be over a long period of time. Because all of us, remember the twists and turns, we will have bad days. But if you are having a bad day for months, then I would suggest probably you need to get a bit more support. Okay? Being withdrawn. Normally you have your group of friends and then you decide, oh, I just want to be alone. So that change in behavior, maybe change in your sleeping patterns. Maybe you, as I talked about before, have thought about, I don't think life is worth being here anymore. So suicidal thoughts are always very important to take note of. Don't be afraid to share that with someone close to you. It's not about being happy, so don't look at that as the goal. It's about your quality of life. It is possible to have mental health issues and have a fantastic life. As I've shared previously, I brought my box with me because I struggle with anxiety issues. I struggle with coming to new places, meeting new people. Now, I know I'm talking to you here and it seems like, no, she doesn't have a problem. You don't know what goes on the inside. And so I need to do a mental check-in with myself to help me deal with the issues I face. And one of the things that I have found very helpful, all right, is this idea of a wellness toolbox. That's what I want to introduce to you, something that you can do to deal with some of those symptoms we were just talking about. So this is my wellness toolbox. So we'll open this up in just a second. But the concept of the toolbox is just like it sounds, tools, strategies that you've used before that have helped you to be able to face some of those issues we've talked about. Some people have gone through therapy, maybe for their depression, and they realize, this worked. this helped me a lot. That would go into your toolbox. Or maybe you've had an issue with eating disorders. And so you've come out of that, but you need reminders. You need a checklist to help you to stay in a healthy mindset. That would go into your toolbox. Okay? The wellness toolbox, things you've done in the past that have helped, or things that you can do when things aren't going well, when you're feeling down. For instance, I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and she's come a long way in dealing with her suicidal thoughts and her depression. But under the stress of COVID and all the different kind of limitations, she was feeling that again. And so we just took a few minutes to say, okay, what's in your toolbox? What can you do today that's going to help you to get your mood back in a stable place? So we use this idea of toolbox quite often. So let me show you a little bit what's in my toolbox. Okay, the first one I have, I like this one. It looks a bit busy. This one is my emotional regulation card. Now, what does that mean? That's quite a long word. This is a reminder that I need to have some reflection time. So I've written different things on the back of the card to remind me of what helps me to get my mood to be more balanced. Things like asking the right questions. Instead of telling myself, oh, you're so stupid. Why are you struggling with that? Nobody does that. That's not the right question. Instead, I ask myself, what am I really afraid of? Now, that's not a question we do very often. But if you'll stop and you'll reflect, you'll find that answer, and then you can make a choice what to do with that. Another question I ask myself, why am I really angry? You know, some days it's just like, ugh, you feel like kicking the cat. Everything is frustrating. Well, you need to do some emotional regulation. Sit down, take out your box, take out your tool, and ask yourself, what is really frustrating me? Get to the bottom. Okay, that's one of mine. Another one, I like this. Life is good, but sometimes I don't feel that way. So this one is my self-care card. Now, self-care is probably the first place we start when we're talking about helping your mental health to get to a better place. When you're feeling low, when you're feeling depressed, sad, anxious, first thing to ask yourself, how's my eating habits? Well, I know we all like to snack, okay, especially late night, all right? I'm not talking about you have to be, strict, but sometimes we haven't been eating well, and that actually will affect our mood. Sometimes we're not sleeping well. We're flipping through Facebook until 2 in the morning, so we're not getting a good sleep. These are the basic questions. How am I doing on my exercise? Even just a little bit helps regulate our mood. How about my medication? Am I taking on time? One thing on my card that I love the most, I give myself a permission slip. Permission to take the day off. Sometimes I need to remind myself of that. Good self-care is the starting point for mental wellness. Another one I have, this is a pretty card. I like this one. This one doesn't really have anything written on the inside. It just has a heart. I don't think you can see it very well. That's okay. It says, you matter. I matter. This is my self-compassion card. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we are important. And it's okay to take care of ourselves. Now, I have cards in my box. Some people actually have a virtual wellness box. So they keep all this in their mind. When they need some strategies, they just sit down and they think. I'm more of a physical, hands-on kind of person, so I really like to have an actual card that reminds me, like this one, okay? Mindfulness. Practice my mindfulness. Practice slowing down. Get myself in a place where I can think and act responsively. Now, one last one I want to show you is very, very important. This is a thank you card. Not that you have to say thank you to me, but this reminds me of social connection. Social connection is so important to our mental well-being. Calling a friend. Hey, I need to vent. I am up to here and I need somebody to listen. Or let's just go out for coffee, have a drink. I just need to relax. Or I need someone to give me some advice. We need social connection if we want to have mental well-being, mental wellness. There's a lot of things that we go through when we're trying to balance our life. This is the list I was talking about. Good self-care routine, emotional regulation, self-compassion, very, very important. We don't practice that enough, that I guarantee you. Mindfulness and social connection. These are very important steps that we can do in our wellness toolbox to help us on our journey. Now, sometimes that's not enough. Maybe you have someone at home that you see they're really depressed. And I've tried to help them with good self-care, and I've reminded them to have some social interaction. Nothing seems to be working. How do I know when it's time for them to seek professional help? The question I always ask is, how is this interrupting or interfering with your daily life, with the quality of your life? Some people come to see me for counseling and they don't need a lot of counseling, they just need some good direction, but they need to get it out and talk about it. And other people have a serious issue that just talking isn't going to help, and they maybe need some medication to balance their mood so then they can deal with whatever emotions are troubling them. It's important for us to know that seeking medical help, professional help, is very healthy. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you are going to be, labeled as someone who has mental illness. Those are the thoughts we have, but in reality, it's just like going to the doctor and saying, you know what, I've got a headache, can you give me some Panadol? Sometimes going to a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist is the same thing. I'm struggling with this, I don't know how to get out of it. Can you guide me? And then you will find those steps that will help you. So if you are struggling with some of those symptoms that we listed before, or someone in your family or your workplace is struggling, encourage them. Just take that first step. Get some professional help before it goes on and you suffer and your quality of life suffers. I do know people who have struggled with anxiety to the point where they can't even really enjoy sitting down with their children because the anxiety that's going on in their mind. And then some who struggle with OCD that put so many rules and regulations onto their family members that the family members start to distance themselves. These are the challenges if we don't get help. It interferes with our quality of life. You don't have to live under the dark cloud every day. You can come out and find a better way to move forward. But you've got to face the challenge of taking that first step. Very, very important to go ahead and seek professional help early. There's nothing wrong with just taking a visit and seeing what happens. These are some helplines, okay, that I just want to share with you. I'll leave this up for a minute or two. some of the helplines that you can call. And I would really encourage you, if you have any thought that maybe you are struggling with depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, gambling addiction, go ahead and make a call. The Samaritans of Singapore are well trained to answer and give you help, and it's 24 hours. The Institute of Mental Health, IMH, is also 24 hours. They have counselors constantly on call to give you advice, and they will understand your situation. The Aware Women's Helpline and the National Care Hotline. These are all very important contacts. Some counseling centers, there's many. Okay, I work with Hope Worldwide Singapore. There's also Counseling and Care Center. I just give you a few of the contacts here. Counselors are a good first choice to help you to see whether it's maybe you just need to learn how to have better emotional regulation. A counselor can help you with that. Maybe your issue is you can't stop your mind from fears and worries. A counselor can give you strategies and coping skills. So it's a good place to start. If you're a little bit not so sure you want to try IMH, start with a counselor. But the important thing is when you go, just like when you go see a doctor, you've got to tell the person you're talking with all of your situation. Don't be shy. If you're struggling with gambling addiction, just say it. Get some help. If you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, go ahead and let that person know, and they'll be able to support you and guide you in the way to go. Your mental health is so important as your physical health. But often we don't take care of ourselves emotionally and mentally because we feel shy or we feel embarrassed that we have this kind of struggle. But mental health matters. We will all struggle with some kind of mental health in our lifespan. So it's important that we take steps on our wellness journey to make sure that we have in our toolbox what we need to face the twists and turns of life and to come out with the quality of life that we will enjoy. It's not about a perfect day, although I hope you have one. That would be great. It's not about always having sunshine, although Singapore has a lot of that. It's about you being able to be your best life, your best self, enjoying who you are and where you are going on your journey. I'll end with this quote by Lao Tzu. I love this quote. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I know people use this quote for many different things, but it's so apt, it's so appropriate. I think with mental wellness, sometimes it's just getting us to take that first step, and then we are on our journey to being whole and complete, to being our best self. I hope you've been able to get some of the tips today, and if you need help, reach out, take that first step. If you think someone in your family or in your office needs help, be that one to encourage them. Go and get a mental check-in, just like you would for your physical health. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope this has been helpful for you.
Thank you so much, Patrice, for such a poignant and timely presentation during these times. I think this is something that we all needed to hear, and that was reflected in the results of the poll that we launched at the very beginning of Patrice's presentation. More than 90% of our audience members responded yes, that we should all discuss this topic more often and that we all need to overcome this stigma together. As you said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone for posing those questions to Patrice in the Q&A section. I would like now to transition over to those, and I see we have several questions coming in, but the top question from the audience today is something to do with our work. How can we convince our employers that mental health is something that is important and it's something that we can no longer ignore?
This is a very, very good question, and I think it's something that we can all give a lot of input to our employers. Mental health issues often show up in absenteeism, but if people show up at work, they're physically there, it also shows up in lack of productivity. It's one of those considerations where you're there at your desk, but your mind is somewhere else. And so maybe you're not taking a MC, you're not taking a day off, but you're not able to concentrate. So on the whole, companies lose a lot because of lack of productivity with people with mental health issues. So you can approach your boss, let them know, I'm not able to get the work done that I need to get done. I need some time to go and get this taken care of. Then you can come back straight, refreshed, ready to concentrate. This is the way. If the boss can see and understand, yes, okay, just like if you have a broken leg, like the executive I was talking about, his boss was fantastic. Gave him the time he needed, he's able to take a break, come back, and focus on the job.
That's a great example. I mean, often we all need to see something before we act on it, but with mental wellness, I think we all know that that's something very different. Being in Singapore, we know that it can be a particularly stressful environment
Yes.
in the workplace as well. So how would we differentiate from depression and other types of stress?
Right, I think this is a very good question. How do I know that I'm not just feeling extra blue? It's kind of been a tough situation. My job has been hard. Working from home, we're not used to, kids are at home, we're not used to that. Basically, depression, if it is something that is more than just a few days, like I said, it has to have a time frame. So if you find yourself feeling down, you've tried to do things in your mental wellness toolbox, you've had good self-care, and you're still just under that cloud. If it's gone on, I would say 3 months, 4 months, it's time for you to go and get some professional help.
That's very useful to know. I think we have another question coming in, and as well, this goes back to living in Singapore, and often we don't get to spend as much time as we would like with our loved ones, with our families and friends. And sometimes it would seem that the symptoms aren't very obvious.
True.
And sometimes our friends and family are seemingly okay. So how do we know that they might be able to need help?
Yeah, I appreciate this question a lot. It is very challenging because, like you say, mental health issues are internal. We don't like to wear our emotions outside. We don't like to tell people what our thoughts are. So when we struggle, we often just keep it to ourselves. As a family member or a friend, you can do a check-in. Do the basics first. We always say this in Singapore, have you eaten? Did you have your lunch? This is our greeting, right? But that's a good greeting, actually. So if you haven't seen someone in a while, check first, do they look like they've been keeping healthy? Because some of the early signs of mental unwellness are sleep issues or eating issues. So that would be somewhere that you could check. I will always ask, how was your sleep over this last week? My daughter has struggled a lot, as I have, with anxiety and depression. And when she was going through a lot of her biggest struggles, she was in America. And I'm here in Singapore. And so we just had those times to check in. First question I would ask her, did you exercise? Did you sleep? How's your insomnia? Check those basic things first. If you just ask somebody, hey, how are you feeling? They'll be like, I'm okay. That's not going to give you very much to work with. So change in behavior, change in a pattern. If they've lost weight recently, check on, did you plan on losing weight, or is that something that just happened? If they've gained a lot of weight, be interested, check on that. So I hope these tips can be helpful for you.
Speaking about families, we just do have a concern from one member of the audience who would like to know a little bit more about child and teenage mental health and how we can spot that. She has said that her sister has just witnessed a 15-year-old commit suicide.
I'm so sorry about that. That is a very painful experience for the family as well as for your sister to witness that. It is very challenging to know, again, what is in someone's thoughts. When someone is suicidal, though, they do often give some hints, but sometimes those hints come very late. All right. One of my clients was a 21-year-old who her family didn't know she was struggling with mental health issues and depression until one day they got a phone call that she was on the top of a 34-story building. Now, fortunately, she had texted some friends and said, you know what, I'm going to that building. And her friends were good. They ran to that place and they stopped her. It took them 2 hours to get her to decide to come inside. And the family was shocked. Of course, they were hurt. They were like, why didn't we know about this? What happened? Well, part of that was because they don't have much communication on a regular basis. So one way that you can help with your teenagers and children is to make sure you have talk time, conversation time. There are a lot of tips on how to do that. I would really encourage you, go again, seek a parenting counselor or a therapist and say, how can I build that relationship? Because, you know, teens, they don't like to talk to mom and dad very much. But there are ways you can build bridges with your children to give them that support to know, something's going on, I'm here for you. So it's important to look for those signs again. Are they withdrawn? Are they hiding? Are they always on their social media and not having real communication? These are some things to watch out for. Don't just go and say, hey, are you going to kill yourself? That's not going to help build a bridge. But you can say, you know, I'm always here. I may not understand everything that you're going through, but I care. So maybe we can go and, you know, have some sushi and have a talk. Build a bridge that will start the conversation.
That's great. That's great. And for those who have overcome certain mental health issues in the past, for example, we have one member of the audience who's asked, I had OCD as a teenager, but have since recovered. What's the likelihood that this might come back?
Okay, very, very good question. It's not easy to know when these kind of issues will resurface, but one of the things that I have found is if you are in a new situation under great stress, then whatever mental health issue you have, it will probably start reoccurring. So for instance, a lot of people, when they've come into the COVID situation, because it's so new and it's so stressful and, you know, everything is unknown, those who maybe had anxiety issues before but were doing well, they found that resurfaced. And even for OCD, that can happen. Generally, it's triggered by high stress. So yes, it can happen again. Hopefully, you can use the tools that you used previously. Then you'll be able to overcome it and move past that faster.
And for those of us who might have dealt with trauma in the past that may have triggered some of those mental health issues, how do we deal with that trauma?
That's an important area because I think trauma is overlooked. Very often we just get on with life, right? Just, you know, it's done, it's in the past, let's not worry about it. Why bring up old issues? But actually, trauma sits with us. It sits with us emotionally. It even sits with us physically. So if you have gone through some kind of trauma, I think counseling would be very beneficial. Again, it doesn't mean it has to be a long-term counseling. It doesn't mean that it has to be, you know, a psychiatrist, but talking to someone who has experience with healing from trauma is very useful. And often what I find is, again, similar to the OCD question, trauma memories come back when we get into maybe a familiar situation that triggers it again. I've often found for women who have gone through some kind of sexual trauma or abuse in their childhood, they are okay until they get married. And then they're in a situation where they're living in close quarters and memories and trauma can come back. That's why it's always important to get some professional help, get through that, and then you'll have the skills so that you can have the quality of life that you want.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We do have one more question that's related to the very first question the audience did ask about the workplace and about the stress at the workplace. We talked about employees. What happens in the case of the boss or the employer? They're feeling particularly stressed, or they're dealing with something. Who can they go to, or what's the process for them?
That can be very challenging, right? Because I'm the boss. Who am I going to get help from? I think it's very important, if you do have a HR department, to go there first and find out, does my company have any kind of mental health support? Many companies do. Many insurance companies offer supports, and they have programs that you can, just like this one, you can log into, you can check it out. But I would say, for your own well-being, go and meet a third party. Someone maybe who's not related to your working situation, where you can be free to be able to express your needs. So a counselor, a helpline, a psychiatrist. In that way, you take off some of that pressure from yourself of having to be the boss, and then you can discuss what your needs are and get that strength and that help, those coping strategies, to be able to go back and fulfill your role in the company.
Thank you so much, Patrice, for sharing so much. Unfortunately, that is all we do have time for today. So thank you for sharing this insightful presentation with us.
Thank you, Aniran. Thank you.
This session has truly provided a good reminder for me, and I believe for all of us as well, that in order to lead healthier, longer, better lives, we need to take care of our mental health as well. It may interest you to know that AIA is the first insurer in Singapore with a critical illness plan that provides mental wellness benefit. The plan name is AIA Beyond Critical Care. If you're interested to find out more about this plan, you may head over to the Engage section, where our live AIA agents are ready and on standby to have a chat with you. But don't head off just yet. You can stand a chance to be one of the 5 lucky winners to walk away with a Starbucks gift card worth $20 each. We do have a quiz that is just about to pop up at this screen at the end of this session. You just have to be one of the first 5 to submit all of the correct answers, and the prize is yours. Coming up shortly is a special session with Mr. Louis Lai, Regional Director of Southeast Asia from Fitbit. He will be telling us more about how we can unlock better health and well-being with Fitbit. So do stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you shortly at 10:30. Bye-bye.